Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Marc Ashton. I'm part of the business development team at the Youth Employment Service. For those of you who are regular attendees to this webinar, we typically use this as a forum to provide an update on some of the developments at YES. We're quite excited. We've got a couple of new faces on the team, and we're going to give you an opportunity to meet some of these new team members and find out a little bit about the work that they do with YES. Some exciting news this morning. We've passed through 61,000 jobs with YES, and we've got a number. In fact, we recorded a record month in August in terms of new signups. So the momentum is there. It's going to be a very exciting finish to the year, and I think we're doing some interesting things, and we're looking forward to engaging with you over the next hour. As always, I think we're all Zoomed and Microsoft Teams out. So please, we'd love to make an interactive session. You're welcome to drop questions into the chat facility or into the Q&A facility. We'll then put them all together at the end of the session and interact with you and try and summarize those questions and answers. We thrive off the energy of the participants. So please get your questions coming in. We really do want to engage with you and share some of it. And as always, this is not the end of a session. Try and engage with us afterwards. I'm going to post some of our contact details into the chat facility as well. So we're looking forward to having engagements and follow-ups with you. A playback facility will be circulated, and some supporting documentation, including a copy of this presentation, will be made available. And with that, I'm going to jump straight into it. Before I jump into the presentation, we've got two new team members that have joined us. Samantha Steyn has joined as the Business Development and Strategy Director, and Michaela Martin has decided to step in for Farai, who has been double booked today, and she will be taking over and leading on the IP side. Two new panelists and two new personalities at YES. So I'm going to give Sam an opportunity to introduce herself and then hand over to Michaela. Sam?
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everyone. My name is Samantha Steyn. I was previously the CIO of Cannon Asset Managers, so my background is investment management. I previously spent a lot of time interrogating management teams on the efficiency and performances of their business from a shareholder's point of view. However, I've recently joined YES, and I'm very excited that I get to now interrogate them beyond just financial performance, but rather corporate responsibility and their social investments. This is particularly close to my heart, and I'm very excited to have found a home where my passion and purpose connect so well. So I'm very excited to get to know you all. Please share your questions, and yeah, look forward to the session. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. And then we're going to hand over to Michaela. I think for those of you who have followed the IP story through the YES implementation partner model, has become a core part of it, integrating into broader scorecards and integrating into broader projects. It's a key part of the YES offering. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Michaela to introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michaela Martin, and I work as an implementation partner manager at YES. I recently joined YES a few months ago, and I come from the academic background. So I've done a bit of lecturing over the years and research in the field of political science, international relations, sustainable development. And I'm really excited about today, really excited about engaging with all of you, and also teaching you more about, informing you more about the implementation partner model at YES. Thank you so much.
And with that, I'm going to dive straight into the presentation. I'm going to pull up a YES PowerPoint deck. Give me a moment, and then we'll get right into it. Right, and with that, we are ready to run with our webinar this morning. The topic for today is developing sustainable high-impact jobs, and we'll be looking at the integration of your YES opportunities with things like your CSI spend, your environmental and sustainable and governance initiatives, as well as your sustainable development goals. We're looking forward to talking about broadening your insight and views around YES. But what I'm going to do is just kick off with a little bit of a reminder as to who we are, what we do, and the purpose that YES has tried to fulfill over the last 3 years. So as a starting point, YES is a not-for-profit company established to administer a piece of legislation. It was a YES incentive that was brought in out of the DTIC back in 2018. It is a privately established not-for-profit. So in other words, it has its own independent board. It is audited by Ernst & Young, and it is one of the top highest impact, we'd like to say, highest impact social initiatives in the country at the moment. And in fact, we think, 61,000 jobs over the last 3 years, considering COVID, that probably makes us one of the highest impact initiatives in the world right now. So with that, I'm going to just kind of run you through some high level numbers and purpose of YES, and then we'll get into the meat of the topic. So I think the biggest challenge that we're looking to address at the moment is this issue around, I can't get a job without experience, I can't get experience without a job. And I think that this has become a trap that a number of youth find themselves stuck in South Africa. I think we've seen a lot in the skills development space in terms of learnerships, apprenticeships, and internships. The reality with YES is that its intent is to create a work experience where you're able to go and give 12-month quality work experience, and I'll touch on the quality work experience element in the Q&A, but really the intent is to give 12-month quality work experience for youth where they can get themselves a CV, a reference letter, and a bit of social capital to get them into the workforce. I think this is quite an interesting stat, and I think it's one of these ones that we touch on quite a lot, but I don't think for many of us this really hammers home all that often. A CV and reference letter doubled the chances of employment for women. And I think if any of you have looked at that data that came out of the NIDS-CRAM survey, women were particularly hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. And this opportunity to get back into the workforce is a significant one. We engage a lot with the implementation partners. We engage with a lot of the corporate sponsors. And the moment we see the youth that don't get into a workforce, either straight after the school, straight after completing their tertiary qualification, they end up in this trap where they're unable to actually get that social capital and somebody to say this youth is actually able to go and complete a task that's been assigned to them. So a big thing for YES is to provide a quality 12-month work experience, and YES rewards companies who invest in youth jobs with a BBBEE level up on the scorecard. So just some fun stats. As mentioned, we literally went through 61,000 jobs just before we went onto the call today. That's great news. We've got over 1,600 programs running at the moment. And just for those who are interested and those who remember the history to YES, there were a lot of people who thought that YES would have a sunset clause attached to it. It was going to be a very short-term incentive in terms of its application and implementation. Reality is that we've got organizations, I think we're now onto our 32nd organization that is returning for its 4th year of participation. That's really exciting. These partner companies have come across all different fields, whether you're a multinational, manufacturing, retail, financial services, and particularly exciting, I think it ties into this broader topic, is the topic of how we're integrating with mining social labor plans and broader programs involving things like environmental impact. 3.5 billion rand in youth salaries. For those of you who follow YES on social media, you'll see we often share quite an exciting map which shows jobs that are being created outside of the traditional Gauteng and Cape Town areas. It's very exciting when you can report 70, 80, 90 million rands worth of salaries being injected into places like the Eastern Cape and Northern Cape, which are hungry for these job and work opportunities. And I know that Michaela is going to touch on this in her part of her presentation. A question we often get asked is related to the absorption rate. So for those who are familiar with the YES legislation, 2.5% absorption rate required for a single level up on your scorecard, 5% absorption if you're looking for 2 levels on your scorecard. And YES is tracking this number. It's obviously a rolling number at any point in time, depending on your cohorts, but between 32 and 42% of youth are being absorbed. And it shows just if you give those youth that single opportunity to get into the workforce, they do tend to be absorbed because they tend to show the value to the organization. Over 650 BE level ups have been awarded. And I think this has always been the question was, would the incentive be adopted and did it get applied and understood by the verification agencies, BE consultants, etc. Over 650 of those organizations have already got their level ups on their scorecard. And then those who follow the YES story will know that all youth get equipped with a mobile phone. These mobile phones are delivered over 9.5 million learning minutes. And that will be everything from how to build a digital CV, building things like your financial wellness and financial education, and effectively making you more employable as you go into the workplace. This is just a breakdown of some of the organizations we've worked with. Many of you will recognize these names. it really does show that this has not just been a short-term program that's been developed, but actually it's been recognized by organizations across the fields, whether it's technology, whether it's a multinational. We really have been able to cater for organizations in all industries, and we're really excited to be adding different logos to this page every time we do this presentation. So thank you to those who are on the call who represent any of these organizations. It really has been appreciated. Corporate South Africa often comes in for flack in terms of what it contributes to the economy. The reality is that without your help, those 61,000 jobs would not have been created. These are just two nice CEO testimonials from the Director for Corporate and Government Affairs for VW South Africa, who've been a big supporter of the YES initiative, and Kensani from the Nedbank Group. And there really is just this thing, YES has to be there, the incentive has to be there, the impetus to create work experiences is absolutely critical in terms of the role that YES will play in this ecosystem. In terms of what the benefits and how you can get involved with YES, and I think this is just quite an important slide because people have forgotten that YES is actually quite a broad offering in terms of how we engage with corporates. So the first and obvious option is the level up on your BBBEE scorecard. We've got some very exciting enterprise and skills development programs, socioeconomic development initiatives, particularly with the YES hubs. We've had some nice sponsorships coming in there where work experiences and infrastructure for the YES hubs has been funded. And often people forget YES is a section able to issue Section 18A tax certificates as a public benefit organization. So if you are looking to save something on your tax and put your tax rands to work, you can certainly engage with YES. We've got some opportunities there. And for any of the CFOs on the call, we'll certainly be hitting you up to see how we can work with you more closely. Just a quick reminder of how the YES BBBEE incentive works. There's three formulas that are applied to calculate your YES targets. You can find it on the YES. There's a calculator on the YES website. Most common calculation is 1.5% of 3-year average net profit. 1.5% of net profit after tax divided by 55,000. Alternatively, 1.5% of your headcount, and then there's also revenue tables. There are 3 opportunities with YES in terms of how you can level up. You can get 1 level on your scorecard, do 2.5% absorption. 1 level plus 3 bonus points is 1.5% of your YES target, and 2 full levels on your BEE scorecard, and you can double your YES target and absorb 5% of your youth. Just important reminders there, absorption is not measured in year 1, it's measured at your year 2 or follow-up verification. And remember, one of the most exciting things about YES is that you get upfront recognition. You can register your youth anywhere inside your measurement period for your first year of participation. For those who have already run a successful YES program and are looking to come in with a second year of participation, remember you need to have done 8 months by verification. There are a couple of instances where the DTI will give exemption to that, but when you're doing your planning, please consider that and make sure you get your timing right. Really, what the benefits that YES brings you, brings fresh new ideas and skills into your business, allows you to try out youth cohorts and select the best fit, build and support SMEs and entrepreneurs. And I think this is one of the really exciting things. We work on a lot of really interesting programs at the moment where youth are being able to gravitate or move into enterprise and supplier development beneficiaries. Organizations are capacitating their ESG beneficiaries. Youth are getting work experience, they're getting social capital. If SMEs are the future, then there's no doubt that we want to be able to be out there creating a culture of entrepreneurship. Creating future capacity and taxpayers. I think all of us are exhausted in terms of the drain on the tax base in South Africa. So the more employees we create, the more opportunity we have to broaden and diversify the tax base. And ultimately, you become a driver of economic opportunity. I think that is one of these things that we forget, is that the moment somebody has meaningful employment and enjoying a quality work experience, they become consumers, they become the buyers of your products and services, and ultimately that broadens the economy. With that, I'm going to stop at that point, and I'm going to hand over to Sam, who's going to talk you through the integration of YES with the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the ESG element where YES is able to partner with you.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm going to be discussing SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, which is quite topical at the moment. So just to give you a background as to where these came from, in 2015, the leaders of the world essentially made a big promise that by 2030, the lives of of people across the world will improve or would improve. So SDGs were launched and adopted by 193 UN states in 2015. It was the largest consultation period that has happened within the history of the UN. It was decades of research, involved more than 8 million consultations with people across the world. And really what they were trying to figure out were what issues matter to countries and our planet. And that is how they raised 300 issues and then narrowed it down to 17 goals. And the premise was really leave no one behind. So if we narrow it down to the 17 goals, this is what it looks like. These have now been adopted as the global goals for countries and companies to adopt, and it's really an urgent call for action. So how does this differ? I mean, historically, the UN has created quite a few frameworks, but I think what is unique and quite important when it comes to SDGs is for the first time, we have a framework that recognizes that reducing things like poverty and education needs to go hand in hand with other strategies like improving climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forestry. So it is the one framework that actually incorporates everything and needs to be adopted not just by developing nations or developed countries, but all countries across the continent. And it has now been filtered down to companies because the only way we are going to achieve these goals is through collaboration and partnership. If we move on to the next slide, the real question is, how do the SDGs compare with ESG? So I think for a lot of companies, particularly in South Africa, there's been a large focus on ESG, which stands for environmental, social, and governance. And the way these differ is that ESG is quite corporate centric, whereas the SDGs were developed by the United Nations and are quite thematic. However, as you can see here, there's a great overlap between the two. And really what we are seeing is that corporates are integrating the two, their SDGs and ESG goals. And I think this comes on the back of investors' request. I mean, investors have shifted their attention towards non-financial factors. As this matters, it's no longer just about bottom line profit, but rather, how are you making society a better place? Are you leaving the world worse than how you received it? And ESG, really, corporates are delving into their companies from an environmental, social, and governance perspective, where if you look at SDGs, it's really beyond that. And I think the ask for companies is beyond that. If we are going to tackle the challenges of our planet and specifically our country, the investment by corporates needs to go beyond just their usual business operations into more societal factors. And this brings me to how this incorporates and integrates with YES. At YES, we naturally are trying to challenge one of the biggest social crises in South Africa, being youth unemployment. 58% of YES youth are women, 85% are from grant recipient households. I mean, this is a major issue in South Africa. And I think, like Marc says earlier, it goes more than just offering a youth a work opportunity. You are giving more than that. As he mentioned, they are buying your products, they become consumers of our country. However, giving a youth the quality work experience gives them dignity. They become more valuable to society. They themselves feel more valuable. It reduces social risk within our country, which is forefront of mind. And really, it's a boiling issue that needs to be tackled by everyone, by all corporates, all individuals, all citizens. So I think we are in a special place in South Africa where we have the opportunity to make a difference, which is not available in all countries. So my task or question is, how are you helping our country? And I would like to hand over to Michaela, who will take you through our IP model, which will integrate far more SDGs.
So thank you so much, Samantha, for that. So we are now going to look at the importance of the IP network and the IP model. So through the YES IP model, youth from across South Africa are able to get a first chance at playing an active role in reconstructing the economy. And sectors where our IPs are operating in include the following. So we are in the digital space, health, finance, education, manufacturing, SME development, and conservation. So yeah, so now we're going to look at how the IPs that we currently have are aligned to SDGs and the ESG space. So we have in the education space, Africa Cocoon, which provides families in disadvantaged communities with the opportunity to receive gainful education, good healthcare and primary healthcare, as well as nutrition and food security, and the kind of skills that youth gain in by working in Africa with Africa Cocoon is administration, project management, program facilitation, and they mainly operate in Gauteng and the Western Cape. And then we also have ORT SA, which really trains and supports unemployed youth to be placed in schools as teaching assistants. And they primarily work in the Western Cape. And the kind of skills that youth gain here are really around early childhood development, teaching and administration skills. And they operate mainly in the Western Cape, the Cape Flats. They place youth in disadvantaged communities in schools, and youth really gain really great skills in education and also administration. And then we have Aginova as well. So they partner with the schools, the government, as well as the corporate sector to really enhance, technology and education technology, and really teaches youth how to become active in the space of digital skills and program facilitation. And they work in the Western Cape, the Eastern Cape, Gauteng, Limpopo, and Mpumalanga. And then we have Youth at Work, which is one of our really well-established implementation partners. And they really focus on evolving the youth's understanding of alternative job spaces within social and community contexts. So youth are placed in a variety of traditional and novel roles, expanding the mindset, just creating awareness, and agency, which is a very important component of the program. And youth are employed as sales and marketing in the marketing space, research, teacher support, etc. And they operate nationally across South Africa. And then we have Gold Youth, which mainly operates in Cape Town, and they have a peer education model, which really is about, ensuring that youth from marginalized communities are supported, and they also help in serving, these youth to be able to be business agents and also in other administrative rules, and they are mainly based in Cape Town. And then we are moving on to the health sector. So we have the YHA, which is really a great implementation partner, and they work directly with the Aurum Institute. And they really are active in leading healthcare in the spaces of HIV and TB. So youth work as entry-level healthcare workers in clinics across South Africa, and they gain skills in HIV counseling and testing, data analysis, campaign management, and community interventions, and they are operating in a number of provinces. And then we move over to conservation. We have the Africa Foundation here. So they are currently operating across 73 communities across various countries, and they partner with and beyond that really focus on the three-pronged sustainable development approach, and they focus on the care of the people, the land, and wildlife. And youth develop expertise in the removal of alien plants, propagation, the restoration of degraded areas, and the development and maintenance of social infrastructure. And they mainly operate in KZN and in Mpumalanga. So those are just some of the implementation partners that we are currently working with. We currently have 33 IPs across various sectors, and these IPs are really aligned in reaching YES's goal of sustainable development in this space. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam and Michaela. It's much appreciated. It gives us a nice insight into how this works. Maybe I can just talk to some of the practical elements that are coming up and some of the discussions that we are having at the moment, and maybe just get some food for thought and some creative juices flowing. But to maybe just to understand the YES implementation partner model at a practical level and how you can partner with YES. So the intent behind the IP model is to create higher social impact jobs where your organization is unable to create youth jobs inside of your own organization, or you are in a situation where you have a fixed headcount and are unable to expand your headcount. So the typical contracting framework that will happen there is a corporate funder will come along and say, I'd like to create youth jobs. And I'll give you a very good example. We've got a coal mining business that has just come on recently as a partner to YES. They said, look, we have no ability to create additional youth jobs inside of our own organization. We do want to participate with YES. We are looking at ways to tie it into our SLP. What can you put on the table? And obviously they want to look and say, how do I service my local community? We identified Africa Foundation as one of those partners that would be able to work with them. They've created a number of community jobs inside of the Limpopo region. And as a corporate sponsor and funder, you're able to say we're creating meaningful work opportunities in a community which has been highly dependent on mining. Now suddenly we're creating a whole set of new skills that we're able to work with and go and build on there. Corporate funder will come along and they will say, yes, I would love to partner with YES. We don't want to take these youth onto our own payroll. How can we make that work? YES, through its contracting SHP contracting framework, will allow you to put your youth onto the implementation partner payroll, which means you don't incur the additional skills spend. You can then go and tie that into your YES program. You're bound with 3 parties via the YES implementation partner model, which is the corporate funder, the IP, and YES as the glue that's holding it all together. You'll use that as evidence for your verification process. And what's great about that is you can say you can be a responsible corporate citizen, and you can go and say, I'm really intent on putting back into the communities, and you're able to show meaningful work that's being created. Another example we've got that's coming on board shortly, we've been tasked with the placement of nearly 200 youth in the Atlantis region. And this is where it's the IP model starts to get really fun, is these IPs are looking to create jobs where they're needed. And Atlantis is not a booming metropolis of Gauteng, so we need to be able to say, let's go and create these opportunities there. Our implementation partner went out, did a site visit, identified host sites, identified host schools, and they put everything from technology training initiatives through to small business support, through to agriculture and ag tech projects. So that's really exciting. Then we get even more detailed. We've done 2 very big implementations with mining companies where there has been some, or there's been a requirement to do a lot of community engagement activities. And the intent is there to say, how do we go and engage with the communities to say, this is how the jobs are being created? In one of the communities, it's a particularly volatile setup. Literally, if you recruit somebody from the wrong side of the road, you can lead to upsetting of the local operations there. So there's a lot of engagement that happens. Department of Health, Department of Education, and these IPs then start to work out, how do we go and create absorption pathways to be able to go and say, how do these youth actually get and maintain a work experience at the end of the 12-month contract that they work with. Michaela, I'm just going to chuck a question to you. Maybe you want to just take the listeners through the monitoring evaluation that takes place, how the IPs are scored, what is that process, so that we can understand that the quality jobs are being created.
So thank you so much, Mark, for that. So once a YES implementation partner is onboarded and is officially part of the YES partnership, we then have monthly monitoring evaluation sessions with them, just to ensure that the youth are getting the quality work experience, that they are gaining the skills that they need to become active agents of change in their society. So we have monthly check-ins with our IPs. And then in terms of this, we also provide a scorecard to implementation partners on a monthly basis. And that's just based on absorption, how well are the implementation partner equipped to do that. We also, a big part of the IP scorecard is also about the app engagement. So as I'm sure you know that all YES youth receive a phone, and that plays an integral part in the two modules that YES has. So we have the YES for Youth app, and then we have the YES Live app. So the implementation partner needs to ensure that the youth participate on that, because that inevitably plays such a great role in ensuring that the youth at the end of the program get their CV and their reference letter. We also look at things like youth stories, which really speaks to the impact and the youth on the ground. So how are they experiencing the program? What are they learning about the work environment? What are they learning about themselves through this journey? And we also, another important aspect of the IP scorecard is just on how well does the IP work with YES, and what kind of relationships are fostered, between YES and the implementation partner, and also ensuring, that the relationship between the corporate and the IP is also well nurtured and taken care of. So that in a nutshell is a very high level overview of how we monitor and evaluate the implementation partners in the space. Thank you.
And I think this monitoring evaluation function is such a critical part of YES, and whether it is through the implementation partner model or those organizations who are running their own programs internally, the intent behind YES is to monitor, if you read the legislation behind, is to monitor the delivery of a quality work experience. And a quality work experience ensures that the youth have an employment contract, they've got a supervisor, they've got the understanding of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, and they actually have the ability to voice the fact that they are or aren't receiving a quality work experience. So there's a couple of mechanisms there. Michaela touched on the YES mobile phones. But we also have a number of other functions. We have a call center that does about 1,800 calls a week to youth. And I mean, I'll just give you guys as listeners some practical examples of things that have come out during that process. So, if we look at the YES mobile phone, and this is part of the reason it's a key part of the monitoring evaluation function, is we had a situation at the start of last year, start of 2021, where the cohorts were all reporting a negative work experience in a particular corporate, and we started to do some deep diving into it, and we discovered that I think there were 10 or 12 youth on that program had been told they could just sit at home and claim the salary every month. They didn't have to go in and do a work experience. Call center identified that and escalated it to the team. We phoned up the corporate and said, what's happening? And they said, well, we didn't think you were actually going to catch us on it. And subsequently that was addressed. We have had situations where youth have not been paid, and these are the kind of things that is being done. So as a corporate, you want to do this in a responsible manner. And YES is monitoring and evaluating the placements and the type of work experience that's coming through. With that, I'm just going to stop for a moment and allow the participants to submit some questions. We've got some that are coming through either over email or we can see in the chat or Q&A function. Please feel free to put some questions in, and then we'll try and put them all together and give you some answers around some of the more common questions as well that are coming through. So over to you guys as an audience. Give us some questions and we'll start responding to them in about 60 seconds. Right, so we've got a couple of questions coming through, and I'm going to address them in a couple of, I'm going to consolidate some of them, but I'm also going to try and address them one by one because I think some of them refer to specific options. So a question that's come through via Pearl is, what happens if the company does not pay its M&E fee immediately and opts to pay it after 6 months? So just one step back for those who are not familiar with the YES kind of onboarding process and the fees associated with YES. There are typically 3 fees associated with YES. The first one being a company registration fee, the second one being a monitoring evaluation fee, and the third one being the YES salaries that are that the youth are receiving on a monthly basis. So the question that's coming through is, what happens if I pay my registration fees, but I only pay my monitoring evaluation fees 6 months down the line? In principle, there's nothing that stops you from doing that. The reality of it, though, is that YES is unable to perform its monitoring evaluation function of your youth cohort if the monitoring evaluation fee has not been fulfilled. And the reason for that is that the youth need to be uploaded onto a YES system. And there's an interesting kind of sideline to this. So one of the biggest risks you face when you're setting up a YES program is that you take youth that have already participated in a different YES program, and you haven't verified that they haven't actually participated. So the requirements for a YES program is 18 through to 35, unemployed at time of contracting, and cannot previously have participated in a YES program for longer than 8 months. I mean, the intent behind YES is that quality work experience. And if you find that you've ended up hiring a youth that has previously participated, by the nature of YES, it's black or white. You either meet your target or you don't meet your target. If you find that a youth has been participating in another program, and this does come up quite often, you may find yourself caught out there. We've seen youth working remotely where they're actually sitting with 2 employment contracts with 2 different corporates, both of them claiming them as YES, and whoever uploads them first, they have them on the system. So those are the challenges that go with it. There's nothing to say that you can't, particularly in first year of participation, your youth might have started before you actually registered your YES program. There's nothing to stop you paying that as a delayed fee or down the line, but the intent is to try and get those fees paid upfront. Obviously, YES is not for profit, so that's its bread and butter in terms of its operations, but it also requires that to have those fees paid so that the YES modules the YES phones can be allocated and the monitoring evaluation can take place on those youth. So that answers the first question. Do the IP partners guarantee work of 5 days a week over 12 months, excluding leave? I'm going to hand that to Michaela.
Thank you, is it Linda for that question? Yes, so all our implementation partners work and ensure that youth work 5 times a week, and then youth have about a 15-day annual leave that they can take within the 12-month quality work experience.
Just the common question that comes up there is, are the youth forced to take their leave, or are they encouraged to take their leave? So what the corporates don't like, corporate funding partners don't like, is a situation where a big leave accrual has arisen. So typically in their employment contracts that they sign with the youth, they are encouraged to ensure that they have actually done, that the youth have taken their leave, and it's part of an agreement that they have with that YES has with the implementation partners, is that they encourage them to take their full leave. Let's just have a look here. Just want to check if it's a first year to apply for BBBEE rating. I understand that if hiring is 7 youths, it will give 2 level up. I'm not sure the question is I'm just going to try and paraphrase the question here. First year of participation, youth can participate at any time inside the measurement period. You can have your youth registered on the 27th of December with a December year end and get them verified at the following week if that's your measurement period. You can get a full 2 levels. There is a misunderstanding in some cases where people say that you can't get 2 full levels in a single measurement period. That is incorrect. Remember, yes, additive. So you achieve a rating and then you put yes on top of that. You can get to full levels on your scorecard, and we've seen a number of organizations achieve that. I hope that answers that question. We're enrolling youth in a warehouse environment. Will it be possible that we can grant more employees to one supervisor instead of the 10 to 1 supervisor?
So we encourage that there are 10. Okay, so that at least one supervisor has 10 youth to supervise. That just allows, for more close contact with the youth, and also ensuring, that youth are taken care of well. When there are instances of a supervisor having more than 10 youth, it becomes difficult to oversee the youth and also to have that one-on-one contact with the youth. So we encourage supervisors to just have about 10 youth that they supervise.
Next question, how many organizations in South Africa are an active part of this initiative? How many are involved in imparting experience to our youth? So that's a multifaceted answer to that. There is about 1,000 corporates that are directly participating as sponsors of youth. On top of that, there are organizations that are funding through enterprise and supplier development initiatives into YES hubs. For those of you familiar, for instance, with that Blossom model, we've seen that where they are either bolting that onto a hub or bolting that into their own operations. We typically talk about 1,500, 1,600 corporate partners. Fun fact for the year, February was our record month in terms of new corporate signups, and our finance team actually just gave us an update prior to coming into this webinar. It was a record month, a new record month in terms of new corporate signups, which is a really good sign that the economy is switching back on. We do look forward to finding other partnerships. I mean, I think the thing that often gets thrown back at YES is that the presidency came out and said that YES was going to go and create 1 million youth jobs over three or 5 years, or whatever the initial challenge was. The reality is that YES is only a small part of that initiative. We're always looking to partner with different initiatives and different partnerships. I think the kind of trick to this is how do you get the flow of money to unlock the creation of the youth jobs. And hopefully, as you're kind of hearing from this webinar, we're moving it beyond a BEE level up through to broader discussions. And we're starting to have global foundations that are putting money in. Grant funding is coming through. There are so many exciting things happening with YES. We can really put together some powerful projects. I think the nice thing about YES is we always talk about it having a bit of a halo effect and people wanting to participate. I always say to Tash when she was here, YES was one of the, it was one of the few unicorns that South Africa had ever created. 3 years, 61,000 jobs, a little bit of, it really was just like a big startup that really grew and had some massive impact, even take into consideration the impact of COVID. So I hope that answers that question. Next question, there are many other apprentice programs running like mechatronics and commerce. Are there plans to create some synergies between these and the YES initiative to enhance and ensure longevity of this initiative? Absolutely. We are of the view that, if YES is purely going to sit on this basis of a triple BEE level up, it is probably going to at some point reach a ceiling. The intent, and that I think is why this implementation partner model, and I think a lot of the work that Sam is doing around SDGs and kind of broader discussions with corporates is such an important part of what we're doing. I can maybe just give you quite a cool piece of insight in terms of a practical project that we are doing some really interesting things with. It's actually it's an equity equivalent investment program project that was approved by the DTIC incorporating YES. And that creates nearly 800 youth jobs. It is a skills training development initiative. It includes the SMME facilitation. There are some events that go with it. There is skills development. And that is targeting about 17% absorption, where a big chunk of those youth will be moving into technical skill positions where they'll be doing coding, coding clubs, etc. So there's some very cool things happening there. So hopefully that talks to it. I think YES also just has to play to its strengths as well. Our CFO actually had a very cool number the other day, and it starts to put it in context. YES employs somewhere between 55 and 60 people at any point in time. They're looking after 1,000 jobs each per person in terms of monitoring, evaluating, either signing on or tracking programs, etc. Obviously, we box smart and we box with the resources that we have. Some more questions. It's great. Thank you very much to everybody who puts questions in. Sometimes we do these, we have these discussions and you don't get the interaction, and it sometimes feels like we're talking to a screen. So we really do appreciate you guys taking the time. And Pearl, thanks always for your questions. It's always appreciated. It's nice to see your name on the list again. So Paul's asked a couple of questions here. Are the YES modules accredited? At this moment in time, they are not accredited. We do have some discussions going on around some accreditation related to YES, and in fact, there's also an interesting discussion around potential recognition for for level 1 organizations that are going to, what are the benefits to them partnering with YES, and we're doing some interesting lobbying and discussions with the DTRC, so that's what we're quite excited about, and definitely watch the space. What is YES doing about corporates who do not pay candidates their stipends? What an exciting question. The answer to that is, this is where the YES monitoring evaluation function really does come into its own. A youth often is, we sometimes talk about a job being weaponized against a youth. The youth is told, be grateful for the fact that you have a job, be grateful for the money that you do get paid. We've seen businesses going into business rescue and still trying to claim their YES recognition. We've seen businesses simply not paying the youth and saying, oh, well, YES will just give me my recognition. The answer to that is, depending on whether there's an intermediary in the way, remember a number of people will run their YES programs through an intermediary. We will then engage with the legal teams, the verification teams, etc., to go and chat to them and understand the situation. Remember, again, YES is not the arbiter of the level up. At the end of the day, the arbiter of the level up is the verification agency, but there is going to be sampling that's done as part of this, and we are able to then engage and discuss in the same way where organizations have struggled to get their level up, and YES has been able to intervene. We've been able to then go and say, we have some concerns about certain programs, and we continue to engage with corporates around that. Are we allowed to deduct from the stipends if the YES youth have a negative leave balance? The answer to that is comply with the Basic Conditions of Employment Act and run a payroll. This every now and then comes up. My kind of guidance around this is there's a mixture of head and heart. So obviously the head says that we've accumulated a negative leave balance. The heart says, the moment you take money out of somebody's pocket for 3,760 Rand or whatever the national minimum wage is, it becomes punitive, and your loss there is potentially losing youth on a program. Remember, if a youth drops off before 8 months, you end up in a situation where you have to replace them with a new 12-month fixed term contract. And they will then be required to, that has probably got a higher cost than being punitive on an entry level salary. Again, you will just engage with your typical HR policies and standards there. Question, how do we get in touch with the Africa Foundation? I'm going to ask Michaela just to pop her email address into the chat function, just so that you can have a look there, and she'll be able to connect you up with it. I think this is one of the things about YES, is that we are collaborative in nature. We do not have we don't have an intent to say these are our IPs, or we can do everything on our own. Our IPs yesterday, we're talking about this Atlantis placement, and it's a big cohort, and they were all, the phones were working yesterday, trying to work between different partners. We do encourage a collaborative environment with it. In my experience, what percentage of youth are absorbed by the IPs/hosts themselves upon completion of the 12-month YES program? Before I answer that in full, I'm going to hand over to Michaela just to talk a little bit about how organizations, or the IPs in particular, plan their absorption pathways.
Thank you so much, Mark, for that question. So basically what happens, we encourage our implementation partners to start their absorption plans as early as possible. Obviously, with the economy and COVID, a lot of our implementation partners are finding it very difficult to ensure that youth at the end of the program do get or absorption is ensured. But it's really dependent on the sectors that the implementation partners in. And I think the minimum absorption and like I've said, it's really sector dependent. So I know in our education space, our IPs there, have absorption or ensures absorption between 5% and 10%. And then implementation partners like Africa Cocoon, for example, really ensure, a large number of youth are absorbed in various sectors, because they're operating not only the education sector, but also other sectors, and they have many hosts, that they work with. So more or less by the 8th month, that's when we need to have a clear plan of how the implementation partner is to ensure absorption. And then we also encourage them, if they are finding challenges, that we also at times engage with the corporate to also assist the implementation partner with starting businesses if the youth are interested in taking the entrepreneurial path. So at YES, the two ways that absorption is measured is through a permanent contract, so a contract without an end date, and then the second one is around ensuring that youth that want to go into the entrepreneurial space are supported, and then they can submit business plans to the corporate as well. So I think Mark can speak to those points as well. Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Michaela. Yeah, and I think that's the thing that we're really getting excited about. I think for those who kind of participated in YES back in 2019, it was often a bit of a fire and forget, and hey, I'm chasing my B level up. What we're really excited about at the moment is the way that organizations are starting to adopt a multi-year approach to YES. They're not just looking for a short-term win. They're saying, please, can we go and work with us? Please, can you be part of our social labor plan discussions? Please, can we be part of a enterprise and supplier development initiative where youth are actually going creating their own businesses? Please, can we train you up to be able to go and work as take ownership of micro franchises? So there's plenty of reasons that YES is starting to do some really interesting things. I think this is my key takeaway for today, is we'd love to engage with you beyond simply a short-term level up on your scorecard. We really do want to encourage you to think about YES as being part of a broader strategy, not just BEE, but also just, your social impact in terms of your what is the legacy you leave behind in the country. We're running pretty much on time, which I'm very impressed with. We are, as an ex-journalist, it's nice to meet deadlines. I'm going to give another 60 seconds if anybody else wants to submit any other questions. Other than that, I will then wrap up and we'll go from there. 60 seconds for any other last questions. Great. So there's just one question that's popped through that I'm going to just address, and it relates to how much do YES youth get paid? So the answer to that is primarily aligned with the national minimum wage. For those who are doing planning for their next year programs, a couple of people have been caught out about this, just so it's a relatively simple thing, but people do get caught out on it. Is currently it's 3,760 on the 40-hour work week. You can start to plan to incorporate the change in national minimum wage effective from 1 March. Again, we're not quite sure what that's going to be, but if you look at historical trends, you can probably build in a couple of percent just to give you a consideration there. But also, just one of the things that does come through very strongly is, the difference between somebody, somebody that pays 3,760 and somebody that pays 4,500, which is, it sounds like a relatively small rand amount, but the absorption levels, the stickiness of your program does tend to come through in that respect, in terms of youth not dropping off, youth not job hopping. Kind of the highest YES salary I've ever seen is 32,000 Rand. There was somebody, a youth appointed as a financial manager. We've seen youth that are appointed in software development positions. And really, I just kind of closing thought is these youth represent an enormous pool of talent. We often look at programs, particularly those of us that look at it through a BEE or compliance lens. We look at it through what we see on a spreadsheet. But when you start to see these youth implementing programs and doing actual work, we were at a hackathon last week, and it was just brilliant just to see the potential that's out there. So, maybe if I leave you with a thought, YES has got enormous potential to work with you. We'd love to work with you. This is a short session, but it's one that hopefully plants a few seeds in the background. Venetia, thank you for your compliment there. It is really appreciated. And, the work that you've done in terms of a contribution to youth, I think you're going to see the benefit of that for many years to come. So thank you for that. And ladies and gentlemen, with that in mind, and pretty much exactly on time, thank you all for giving up an hour of your day today. And we look forward to hosting our next session and giving you a few more updates. So on behalf of Samantha, Michaela, and myself, thank you for your time, and we will see you all next time. Look forward to chatting. Bye.